He had it all: raw talent, unstoppable charisma, and a future paved with golden opportunities. A college basketball sensation at just 19, he was destined for greatness, adored by fans, respected by teammates, and scouted by the pros. The lights were bright, the cheers deafening, and the path to fame seemed inevitable. But behind the roaring crowds and flawless image was a dark secret waiting to erupt. A secret so devastating, so soul-shattering, that when it finally came to light, it didn't just destroy his dreams, it unraveled the lives of everyone around him. It all came to a head in a single moment, late one night, when emotions boiled over and turned into an act of unspeakable violence. In the quiet of that room, where betrayal hung in the air like a suffocating fog, a promising future turned into a chilling tragedy. Blood was spilled, lives were shattered, and nothing would ever be the same again. What drives a rising star to the brink of despair? How does someone with everything to lose make a choice so horrifying it leaves an entire nation reeling? This is a story of passion, betrayal, and the unrelenting pressure of success, a story that reveals how fragile even the brightest lives can be when pushed to their breaking point. Before we unravel this harrowing tale, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Crime Chronicles. Here, we explore the darkest corners of human behavior and bring you stories that stay with you long after they're told. Let's dive in. At just 19, Jordan Blake was living a dream most could only imagine. A rising star on his college basketball team, he wasn't just another player, he was the player. With an uncanny ability to sink impossible shots and lead his team through even the toughest games, Jordan was hailed as the next big thing in the sport. His name was already on the lips of professional scouts, and his every move on the court drew roaring cheers from fans who couldn't get enough of his magic. Off the court, Jordan's charisma was just as magnetic. His easy smile and natural charm made him a favorite among teammates and coaches alike. He seemed untouchable, unstoppable, a prodigy destined for greatness. But Jordan's life wasn't just about basketball. His world was made brighter by Camille Turner, his girlfriend of over a year. Camille, also 19, was a bundle of ambition and energy. A journalism major with dreams of becoming a celebrated writer, she matched Jordan's drive and determination in her own field. Together, they were the golden couple of campus, a duo that radiated success and love. Camille was his biggest supporter, never missing a game and always sharing glimpses of their relationship on social media. Pictures of her cheering from the stands, or of the two of them posing after his victories, painted a picture of unwavering support and affection. Their relationship wasn't just built on love. It was built on partnership. Camille helped Jordan navigate the pressures of being in the spotlight, grounding him when the weight of his rising fame threatened to overwhelm. For Jordan, her presence was like a calming anchor in the whirlwind of his growing career. But Jordan's circle didn't stop at Camille. There was also Trey Lawson, his closest friend and teammate. Trey wasn't just another guy on the team, he was like a brother to Jordan. They had bonded during their freshman year, their shared love for basketball forging an unbreakable connection. On the court, their chemistry was undeniable. Trey's sharp assists and Jordan's flawless finishes made them a lethal duo. Off the court, their friendship was just as strong. They shared late-night strategy sessions, inside jokes, and dreams of making it big together. The three of them, Jordan, Camille, and Trey, formed a tight-knit triangle. Their lives intersected in ways that seemed effortless, almost fated. Camille cheered for both of them during games, often capturing their on-court moments and sharing them with pride. Trey, in turn, became a trusted figure in Camille's life, someone she could rely on when Jordan was caught up in the demands of training and travel. There were moments of laughter that made their bond seem unshakable, Trey photobombing Camille's candid shots of Jordan, Camille teasing them about their intense pre-game rituals, or the three of them grabbing late-night burgers after a hard-fought win. Their lives were so intertwined that no one questioned it. To the outside world, they were an inseparable trio, bound by love, friendship, and shared ambitions. But beneath the surface of their perfect camaraderie, cracks were forming. small, almost imperceptible at first, but growing with each passing day. What seemed like an unbreakable bond was being tested in ways Jordan couldn't yet see. He had no idea that the people he trusted most, the ones who formed the foundation of his life, were hiding secrets that would change everything. For now, though, Jordan was focused on the future. The bright lights of the court, the roar of the crowd, and the unwavering support of Camille and Trey were all he could see. His life was perfect, or so he thought. It was a crisp Friday evening when Jordan Blake sat down with Camille in the small apartment they often shared between classes and games. The air was heavy with an unspoken tension, one he hadn't noticed creeping into their conversations until recently. Camille had been unusually quiet during his last few games, her usual vibrant cheers replaced by polite claps and distant stares. Jordan chalked it up to school stress, but now, as they sat across from each other, her expression told him it was more than that. "Jordan," she began, her voice trembling. She fiddled with the hem of her sweatshirt, unable to meet his gaze. "I need to tell you something." His stomach tightened. There was a vulnerability in her tone that he wasn't used to. Camille was always confident, always sure of herself. Whatever she was about to say, he knew it wasn't going to be good. "I'm pregnant," she said, the words tumbling out so quickly it took him a moment to process them. For a second, he felt a flicker of confusion, then shock. "Pregnant," he repeated, his voice a mix of disbelief and something close to panic. "Camille, are you serious?" She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I've been so scared to tell you." Jordan's mind raced. A baby? His entire life had been meticulously planned around his basketball career. Scouts were circling, interviews were being scheduled, and the dream he had worked for his entire life was so close he could taste it. A baby wasn't just unexpected, it was unimaginable. But what came next shattered him completely. "It's not yours, Jordan," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It's Trey's." For a moment, everything stopped. The noise of the world, the hum of the fridge in the corner, the ticking of the clock on the wall, it all faded into silence. Jordan felt as though the ground had been ripped out from under him. "What?" His voice was low, almost a whisper, but the intensity in his eyes made Camille flinch. "I'm so sorry," she said, her tears falling freely now. "It happened during the tournament last month. Trey and I, we didn't mean for it to happen. It was a mistake." Jordan's head swam. Trey. His best friend. His brother. The person he trusted most in the world, after Camille. The betrayal hit him like a tidal wave, pulling him under, drowning him in a mix of anger, heartbreak, and humiliation. "You're telling me the father of your baby is my best friend?" he spat, his voice rising. "The guy I've gone to war with on the court? The guy I've trusted with everything?" Camille nodded, unable to meet his eyes. "I couldn't keep lying to you, Jordan. You deserve the truth." He stood abruptly, pacing the room like a caged animal. "The truth?" he shouted. "The truth is you both stabbed me in the back. Do you have any idea what you've done to me?" "I know I hurt you," Camille said, her voice barely audible. "But I had to tell you. I couldn't keep living like this." Jordan felt a mix of emotions he couldn't untangle, anger at Camille, betrayal by Trey, shame that this was happening to him, the golden boy, the rising star. What would people say? How could he face his team, his coaches, the fans who idolized him? The weight of it all pressed down on him like a suffocating blanket. This wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about the timing. His career was at a turning point. Scouts were watching his every move, evaluating not just his skills but his discipline, his focus, his ability to handle pressure. And now this revelation threatened to destroy everything he had worked for. "Why now?" he demanded, his voice cracking. "Why tell me now, when everything is on the line?" Because you deserve to know, Camille said, her tears falling silently. I couldn't keep it from you anymore. Jordan sat down, his head in his hands. He wanted to scream, to punch something, to make this nightmare go away. But there was no escape. The truth was out, and there was no undoing it. As the days passed, the betrayal began to consume him. Every time he stepped onto the court, he saw Trey. His once loyal friend, his brother in arms, was now the source of his humiliation. He avoided Camille, unable to look her in the eye. The pressure mounted as the whispers of scouts and interviews became louder, the dream of the NBA drawing closer. But now, it felt tainted. How could he focus on his future when his present was falling apart? Jordan tried to push through, to bury his pain under hours of practice and grueling workouts. But the weight of the betrayal was too much to bear. It wasn't just the personal blow, it was the unraveling of the life he thought he had, the people he thought he knew. And with each passing day, the pressure inside him built, threatening to explode. The night was heavy with tension, the kind that lingered in the air long before a storm. Jordan had asked Camille to meet him at his apartment. After days of avoiding her calls and texts, he finally relented, agreeing to talk. He needed answers, needed to make sense of the chaos that had upended his life. Camille arrived hesitantly, her usual confidence replaced by a nervous energy. She clutched her phone tightly, as though it might provide her some kind of protection. The apartment was dimly lit, the glow from a lone lamp casting shadows on the walls. Jordan sat on the couch, his elbows resting on his knees, his hands clasped tightly together. His face was a mask of exhaustion and barely contained anger. Camille stood near the door, unsure whether to approach him or keep her distance. "Sit down," Jordan said finally, his voice low and tense. Camille obeyed, sitting across from him on the edge of a chair. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was suffocating. "You need to explain," Jordan said, breaking the quiet. "You need to tell me how this happened. How you could do this to me." Camille looked down at her hands, her fingers nervously twisting the edge of her sweater. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she began, her voice trembling. "It was a mistake." "A mistake?" Jordan's voice rose, the anger he had been holding back bubbling to the surface. "You slept with Trey, my best friend, and now you're having his baby. That's not a mistake, Camille. That's a choice." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't plan it, Jordan. I swear. It was one night. We were at that tournament, and you were so focused on the games. I felt invisible." "Invisible?" Jordan stood, pacing the room like a caged animal. "You felt invisible, so you decided to sleep with the one person I trusted most? Do you hear how insane that sounds?" Camille wiped at her tears, her voice growing more desperate. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I never wanted this to happen." Jordan turned to face her, his fists clenched at his sides. "But it did happen. You hurt me in the worst way possible. You destroyed everything. I told you because I thought you deserved to know the truth," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought maybe we could figure this out together." "Figure this out?" Jordan's laugh was bitter, hollow. "There's nothing to figure out, Camille. You and Trey, you both made your choice. And now I'm the one left picking up the pieces." The conversation escalated, each word cutting deeper than the last. Camille tried to calm him, but Jordan's emotions were spiraling out of control. The betrayal, the humiliation, the sheer weight of everything he had bottled up finally erupted. "You've ruined my life," Jordan shouted, his voice shaking with anger. "Do you understand that? You've ruined everything I've worked for. My career, my future, gone. Because of you." Camille stood, her tears flowing freely now. "I know I hurt you, Jordan. But this isn't just about you. This is my life too, and I'm trying to take responsibility for what happened." "Responsibility?" Jordan's voice cracked, his fury reaching its peak. "It's too late for that." In a blind moment of rage, Jordan grabbed a nearby trophy, one of his prized awards from a tournament, and hurled it across the room. The sound of it shattering against the wall echoed like a gunshot. Camille flinched, stepping back instinctively, her hands raised as if to shield herself. "Jordan, stop," she pleaded. "This isn't you." But Jordan wasn't listening. His vision blurred with anger, his thoughts consumed by betrayal and pain. In that instant, he snapped. Lunging toward Camille, he acted on impulse, his hands closing around her neck. Camille struggled, her hands clawing at his arms, but he was stronger. Fueled by the storm of emotions raging inside him, he didn't stop until she went limp in his grip. The silence that followed was deafening. Reality crashed down on Jordan as he let her lifeless body fall to the floor. He stumbled back, his hands trembling as he stared at what he had done. Camille's wide, unseeing eyes stared back at him, frozen in a final expression of fear and sorrow. For a moment, Jordan was paralyzed, his mind unable to process the enormity of his actions. But then panic set in. He grabbed his coat and keys, fleeing the apartment without a plan, without even looking back. All he knew was that he couldn't stay there. When the sun rose the next morning, Camille's body was discovered by a neighbor who had heard the argument and went to check on her. The police were called, and the investigation began immediately. News of her death spread quickly, sending shockwaves through the campus. The golden couple, the rising star, everything they represented was now overshadowed by a brutal crime. As investigators pieced together the events of that night, the community was left reeling, struggling to comprehend how a story of love and ambition had turned into a tragedy that would haunt them all. The investigation into Camille Turner's death began within hours of the gruesome discovery. Police officers arrived at the scene, greeted by the stillness of the apartment and the haunting presence of Camille's lifeless body. The shattered trophy on the floor and signs of a struggle pointed to violence, but it was the sheer brutality of the crime that left even the seasoned investigators shaken. This was no random act, it was personal. The first step was to determine who had been in the apartment that night. Witnesses in the building came forward, describing raised voices and a heated argument that escalated quickly. One neighbor reported seeing Jordan Blake leave in a hurry, his face pale and his movements frantic. His name became the centerpiece of the investigation almost immediately. Detectives began piecing together Camille's recent interactions, starting with her phone. What they found painted a picture of a complicated and emotionally charged situation. Text messages between Camille and Jordan revealed the tension between them in the days leading up to her death. In one message, Camille had written, "We need to talk, Jordan. You can't keep avoiding this." Another, sent just hours before the argument, read, "I'm sorry for everything. I just want us to find a way through this." But it was the messages between Camille and Trey Lawson that provided the most damning evidence. Their exchanges revealed the secret affair and the pregnancy. One text from Trey read, "Are you sure about this? You haven't told him yet, right?" Camille's reply, terse and filled with dread, said, "He knows. I had to tell him. He deserves the truth." When confronted by detectives, Trey initially denied any involvement in the situation. But as the questioning intensified and the evidence mounted, he broke. Admitting to the affair, Trey claimed he had no idea Camille was pregnant until her confrontation with Jordan. "It was a mistake," he said, his voice shaking. "I didn't want this to happen. I didn't know she told him." Trey's confession only deepened the tragedy, exposing the web of betrayal that had set the stage for the crime. Meanwhile, the search for Jordan intensified. After fleeing the scene, he had disappeared, leaving behind his phone and other personal belongings. Authorities tracked his movements through surveillance footage, spotting him at a gas station miles away from campus. His car, abandoned on a quiet street, was found the next morning. The once promising athlete was now on the run. The media caught wind of the story, and it spread like wildfire. News outlets reported on the shocking fall of a rising star, juxtaposing footage of Jordan's spectacular on-court performances with the grim reality of his alleged crime. Former fans expressed disbelief, while commentators speculated on the pressures of fame and personal betrayal that could drive someone to such an act. It wasn't long before Jordan was located. Officers found him hiding at a friend's house just 2 towns over, disheveled and visibly shaken. When they arrived, Jordan didn't resist. He surrendered quietly, his head bowed as the handcuffs were placed around his wrists. The once confident athlete, who had dominated courts and inspired fans, was now a broken man, facing the reality of what he had done. As he was escorted into the police station, cameras flashed, capturing the image of a fallen star whose bright future had been obliterated by a single, devastating choice. During his initial questioning, Jordan was silent for the most part, offering little beyond acknowledgement of the confrontation with Camille. "I lost control," he eventually admitted, his voice hollow. "I didn't mean for this to happen." With the evidence stacked against him, witness testimonies, the text messages, and the physical signs of struggle in the apartment, Jordan was formally charged with second-degree murder. The weight of the charges, combined with the public attention surrounding the case, marked the end of what had once seemed like an unstoppable rise to greatness. The investigation had revealed a tale of ambition, love, and betrayal gone horribly wrong. For the community, the arrest brought a sense of closure but also deep sorrow. A life had been lost, another destroyed, and a legacy forever tarnished. Jordan Blake, the rising star with the world at his feet, now faced a future defined not by fame but by infamy. The Golden Boy had become a cautionary tale, a reminder of how quickly lives can unravel when secrets and emotions collide. The trial of Jordan Blake became a national media event, capturing the attention of millions who had followed his rise to fame and now his shocking fall from grace. The courtroom was packed with reporters. Now a defendant sat silently at the defense table, his head lowered, as the proceedings began. The prosecution wasted no time painting Jordan as a young man consumed by jealousy and rage. Their narrative was clear: this was a calculated act of violence, fueled by betrayal and a desire for control. They described the days leading up to Camille's death, using text messages and witness testimonies to reconstruct the timeline. The jury listened as the prosecutor read aloud Camille's final messages, her words trembling with fear and regret. "I just want to make things right," one of Camille's last texts read. "I'm sorry for everything." The prosecution argued that these messages revealed Camille's intent to reconcile, only to be met with Jordan's escalating anger. Witnesses testified about the argument they had overheard that fateful night. A neighbor recounted the raised voices and the sound of objects being thrown, painting a vivid picture of the heated confrontation. The defense, however, presented a vastly different picture. They described Jordan as a victim of overwhelming emotional trauma, arguing that the weight of betrayal from both Camille and Trey, combined with the immense pressure of his burgeoning career, had driven him to a breaking point. Psychologists testified about the toll of fame on young athletes, explaining how the constant scrutiny, coupled with personal betrayal, could lead to a psychological collapse. They spoke of Jordan's intense fear of public humiliation and the loss of his dreams, which had been carefully cultivated since childhood. The jury deliberated for several days, torn between the prosecution's portrayal of Jordan as a jealous and violent perpetrator and the defense's plea for understanding of the emotional turmoil he had endured. In the end, the jury returned with a verdict that struck a middle ground. Guilty of second-degree murder. When the sentence was read, 25 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years, there was a murmur of mixed reactions in the courtroom. Camille's family wept quietly, their expressions a blend of relief and sorrow. Jordan's supporters sat in stunned silence, grappling with the reality that the once celebrated athlete would spend the prime of his life behind bars. As he was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, Jordan finally looked up, his face a mixture of regret and resignation. The golden boy who had once dreamed of basketball stardom was now a convicted felon, his legacy forever tarnished. The campus, once alive with the energy of youth and promise, fell into an eerie stillness in the weeks following Camille Turner's death. Her absence was felt in every corner, her laughter that once echoed through the dorms, her bright smile that lit up the basketball games, her unwavering presence as a friend and student. A shadow of grief loomed over the community, leaving students, faculty, and staff grappling with the reality of the tragedy. Vigils were held in her memory, each one drawing larger crowds than the last. Candles lit up the quad, flickering in the cold evening air as hundreds gathered to pay tribute to a young woman who had been full of life and ambition. Camille's story became a rallying cry for a cause that resonated deeply with many on campus. While the community mourned Camille, they also grappled with the downfall of Jordan Blake. The once revered athlete, whose name had been synonymous with promise and greatness, was now a symbol of lost potential. His posters were quietly removed from the gym walls, and the university scrubbed his name from promotional materials. Teammates, who had once celebrated his victories, now spoke in whispers about the betrayal and the crime that had shaken them all. Trey Lawson, Jordan's former teammate and best friend, faced his own fallout. Although he was not directly involved in Camille's death, his betrayal had been a catalyst for the tragedy, and the court of public opinion was ruthless. On campus, Trey was met with scornful looks and whispered insults. His reputation as a loyal teammate and friend was shattered, replaced by a narrative of deceit and selfishness. In the years that followed, Camille's memory was honored through scholarships and initiatives aimed at supporting students in need, ensuring that her legacy lived on in a way that brought hope and change. But the story of Camille, Jordan, and Trey remained a haunting reminder of how easily lives can unravel, and how the choices we make in moments of pain can have consequences that echo far beyond ourselves. It's a story that leaves us with more questions than answers, forcing us to reflect on the human condition. If this story gripped you, don't forget to hit subscribe to Crime Chronicles. Here, we uncover the darkest chapters of human behavior, tales of passion, betrayal, and the decisions that change lives forever.